is.
You're welcome.
The apricot thing.
All right, committee, we have quorum. All right, folks, we're good to go. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on our website. Other individuals in the media may also audibly or visually be recording this meeting. Madam Clerk, any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, an added delegation request from the Hamilton LRT Citizen Advocacy Group respecting community engagement, and they have requested for today's meeting.
Committee's wish. Moved by Councillor Marula, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. All in favor? That's carried. A motion to approve the agenda as amended, moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Marula.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. The agenda item, you said to approve it. I've got an issue with the agenda.
No, this is with the delegation, and now I'm asking for the agenda as amended, so yes, go ahead.
All right. At the last meeting, Mr. Chairman, you may recall that I suggested that we would be preparing a list of questions that we had about this project, and in conjunction with my board, we have prepared a list of questions, a dozen or so. We have forwarded them to staff, only to staff, some time ago, a week ago or so, but with the long weekend and so forth, they've advised me this morning that that they will have answers to me in the next week or two, and then we'll perhaps put them on the agenda for the next meeting. Does that suit you?
Suits me. If it suits you, Aaron.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, staff. Councillor Marula.
Just on that point, I think for future reference, the protocol would be that probably would flow better if the questions were to be presented at committee to then be referred to staff to report back to committee. So if we could do that for future reference, that'd be helpful as well.
Very good. We could do it today.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have copies for everyone if they're so interested.
So
We could review them on record. You said there's a 12 questions.
12 or 13 questions.
Okay.
And as I say, I have referred, the staff have promised to get back to me the next week or two, as long as we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
The questions themselves, item 8.2, can we add that to today's agenda, that you can just get them on the record? So we'll move Councillor Marula, item 8.2, a new item to today's agenda. Flamborough Chamber of Commerce to offer their 12 or 13 questions for public record. Moved by Marula, second by Councillor Ferguson. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Good call, Councillor, and thank you, Aaron. Now a motion to approve the agenda as amended, moved by Councillor Marula, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. All in favor? That's carried. Any declarations of interest? Seeing none. And a motion to approve the minutes of the January 25th, 2016 meeting of the LRT Subcommittee, moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Marula. That's approved. No opposed. Now we have a delegation, Marc Rejean, with the Hamilton LRT Citizen Advocacy Group, respecting community engagement. And Marc will be joined by Alain Bureau. We did already.
Not expecting to be first, but why not? Well, thank you for receiving our delegation. We're here to report back on some of our activities in the last, since the last meeting. Am I clear? Okay, last time I was almost swallowing the microphone. So my name is Alain Bureau, and this is Marc Rejean, who's the lead in our organization. I don't know if some of you caught that, but Mark was introducing myself and introducing himself. Again, thank you. Thank you for receiving us. So our activities lately. We've been doing presentations in various groups. Here you see at the Sherman Home where we almost had 100 people. How we proceed in these presentations is that we canvass the areas that are to be affected in our presentation, and we present the current plans, that is, not current, but the 2011 plans, as the current plans have yet to be put out. Now, what we try to do is explain to people, inspire people, try to get them to understand what the project is. And I can report back that a lot of people think you're building a streetcar. So that's one thing, that's one of the first things that people don't seem to understand is what an LRT is. There's a lot of work to be done there. What I think has been a really easy way to describe this is we're building a subway above ground. Then people start understanding the concepts of stations and how it will proceed throughout the city. They also are very interested in seeing the designs that concern them specifically in their neighborhoods. As you know, there are certain areas that will be affected in the street traffic flow, if you wish, and we're not talking about the bigger questions of two-way, one-way, but a lot of smaller streets, residential streets, will be partially blocked or potentially all blocked, and that has an effect, and people want to know what that will mean to them and how that will affect their daily routines. People have a lot of questions. We talk about detours and construction and how this will occur, obviously until we have the design in place and city staff presents its findings and how it will proceed in the construction process. We don't try to answer these questions. We simply are there to inform, inspire, and stimulate conversation. I must add that we also do so not just for proponents of the system, but opponents. I think it's very, very important for us to have all stakeholders, even the ones that think that this is not the project that will help us. I have done a lot of effort soliciting small business to come to our meetings, going door to door, and trying to stimulate people to come out and actually see what this is about. Now, we're hoping to do this and continue doing this while the city continues to do its own efforts, or Metrolinx, in conjunction with Metrolinx. I think it's important for maybe people to have an initial idea of what this project is, maybe go home, talk about it with the neighbors, and then come to your presentations with the questions that they have, instead of kind of being blindsided, if you wish, with this new information that they have. Honestly, a lot of people have no idea about this project, which brings us to some of our phases of engagement with the public, and that is we'll be doing some information booths at Mohawk College, at and McMaster's. This, I think, is really important because, again, it reflects the needs of people in the future, not just immediately, because we are talking about a rather long timeline. There's questions about sidewalks and how they will be affected, how they'll be wide. We've heard of a certain standard, about 2.5. Now, also, within that comes the expropriation, that big language. Expropriation for many people seems, houses are going to be torn down and things of this nature. From what we understand with the project currently, expropriation is rather minimal, and we're only talking about right-of-way. In some places, it seems like it's about 8 inches of land that's going to be expropriated, and the largest, as the plans are shown in 2011, expropriation would only be at Scott Park, where actually the expropriation is occurring on public land, or land that's been transferred between the school board and the city. So those are big words that we often hear from opponents of the system. Expropriation, people see that word and they think, big projects that we've seen in the past, where large tracts of land are being expropriated and put into action for this particular project. There's also the question of parking parking. A lot of people are questioning the parking segment of the effect of the LRT. And I mean, there are so many possible ways of treating that particular subject. I think there's an abundance of parking space. Now, if there isn't, there are a lot of solutions. I look at many of these LRT stations actually are sitting right beside large empty lots, which could easily be converted into public parking and maybe even create more revenue stream for the city. So there's certainly ways of mitigating the parking, and I think that's an issue that a lot of people have focused on, and I believe Council can certainly come up with creative, and Metrolinx can come up with creative ways of doing so. I can name at least 7 stations that actually have a lot directly beside it that could be converted into public parking, which brings us to other things, public parking for cars, but possibly public parking for cycling. There's a lot of different possibilities here. Let's be creative and find the right solutions. Obviously, there's also big questions as to the spur line. The spur line will be going into a neighborhood that is, as you know, a rather unfavored and impoverished neighborhood. That is, if it is going through Barton, and a lot of people are coming back saying such things as, it's going to be coming through our neighborhood, but we're not going to get any benefit. As you know, this has happened in other areas, such as in Toronto, with the streetcar service yard, which now is being built, or has been built in Leslieville, and they've actually integrated another station in this. This is possibly a great way to stimulate an area that needs a lot of economic development. This is something people are certainly interested in finding out, and I think there are options there. These are all decisions and questions that people are asking. They're also asking about what will affect the buses and how the LRT will integrate that. Questions such as, well, I go from Eastgate to let's say a stop at Ottawa, and then I have to go downtown. How is the LRT going to accommodate me? How are the routes going to be configured around this? This is an important factor, and it actually is reflected in the Rapid Ready program or plan. People are very much asking, not only within the lower city, but also within the mountain and other accessible areas. This means a big reconfiguration of the system, and also people are coming up with great ideas, and they're actually quite inspiring to see that there's a lot of people that are interested in not necessarily all these gung-ho proponents to the system, but just people that want to put in some input. The idea of, and yes, you've heard it before, possibly gauge GO station. How would that affect? How could that help us? People are thinking in many, many ways, a lot more than what we seem to believe. That is, that there are opponents to this particular design, but there's also a lot of people that think this is an opportunity, and often those people's voice doesn't necessarily come out as clearly as others who are opponents to it. I think it's quite inspiring to see people come up to us and bring us a variety of different plans. We have received schemes of all sorts of systems. So people are really thinking about this. We've received, if I may, we've received from the Mohawk Transportation Engineering Technology Program a whole reconfiguration. Now, this was done on their own simply by interest and obviously being scholars. But it's not only scholars. We've had retirees, we've had urbanists show us a variety of different schemes and plans and ideas. So it's really inspiring, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people to feel that this is a project that we need to follow through with, to put all our energies. We rarely have an opportunity in a city to receive such large, it's almost a goose that will lay the golden egg, we're hoping, but it is a rather large project, a project that has to inspire us all. And it seems to be doing so even in the background. We have yet to start this. You have yet to start it to engage people, but people are engaged. If I can go back. Yes. This. Also, as you've seen, some people have gone as far in other systems to go from opponents to proponents, seeing what the development what the redevelopment through LRT has done, and extensions are almost being done throughout different systems. We've seen this throughout North America. And finally, something that's really, that's also very important is demographics are changing. I am speaking to people that are coming from the mountain that have decided to let go of their large homes and to come to areas that have better service. We have students from Mohawk and Mac that are telling us we can't wait for this to come. So the city is changing. We also have new migrants that are coming from other areas of the province, of the country, and of the world who are expecting to have these services and this particular system. Yes. Now, I think it's really important to mention that there is a transition happening in many, many cities across North America where retirees or semi-retirees are actually downsizing and looking into coming into areas that have more services, that are more walkable, that can provide for better health services and entertainment. And I think we're positioning ourselves wonderfully in this particular respect. And finally, there are a lot of challenges, gentlemen and ladies. There are tough decisions that you will have to make. But we are counting you as our leaders to inspire us, to lead us into the future with something that is cohesive. We should, it's hard to build something if you don't believe in it. And I hope that in your findings in the future that you will see that you need to believe, people believe in it and be inspired by this and work together to find the best solutions possible and answer those tough questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Thank you, Mark, again, for your delegation today and your advocacy. Any questions from committee? Seeing none, move to receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Mayor Eisenberger. All in favor? Carried. And I know you'll stick around because we are talking more on engagement right now, as a matter of fact. I'm going to call on Director of LRT, Paul Johnson, to give us an update on the LRT communication strategy.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It's our pleasure to bring forward a presentation which will take you through some of our thinking around communication and engagement as we move forward. Important to recognize that while our conversation today will be about the engagement that's occurred since the announcement around LRT funding in Hamilton and what will occur in the future, this is not the first time we've talked to the community about rapid transit and in particular about LRT. There was considerable engagement done, as you know, to produce the work around the LRT East-West project that currently exists, and there was additional work done in our Nodes and Corridors study where people were actually thinking about how the community would transform around certain nodes and corridors along that route. So I want to acknowledge and recognize that that work has taken place. We're not going to take you through that full chronology of that piece today, but it's really important we understand this is not the first time that we've been engaging the community. But I think this is a little bit different. It tips us into a new phase of this work. It tips us into a new agenda in terms of timelines for this work. And so this morning we're going to walk you through that in a little bit of a partnership fashion. I'm going to speak for just a little bit around some of the context for our conversation today. Kelly Anderson, who you know has been hired as our Manager of Communications and Engagement, will take you through some of the tactics and our timelines. And Jamie Robinson, who's here from Metrolinx, is also going to add some flavor and context in terms of what's already happening on LRT projects in other jurisdictions. And that spirit of partnership around communications between Metrolinx and the city is something that I hope will come through more than just showing the two logos on the screen. It's the way we work each and every day. At a top level, we have a vision for rapid transit in this community. And this is the vision that guides the LRT project. It's the vision that guides rapid transit as a whole. And I think what's really critical in a starting point conversation for LRT, before we get into all of those details that everyone is so interested in, is to recognize why we're doing this in the first place. This is about providing the kind of high quality, safe, and environmentally sustainable transportation that we want in this community, but it's more than that. There's an economic element and a city building element of LRT that's so critically important for the work that we're doing on this project, and I would add the work that will continue to happen on projects in the future. The LRT corridor, the LRT project as it's laid out for you, is an important spine of our transportation link. It is not the final piece of the puzzle in terms of transit and transportation in this community. An important first step in terms of how we're building the system for the future. But a reminder that this is just more than just a transportation piece of infrastructure. I did want to also comment because just recently the citizens jury brought forward their report. It was referred to the LRT office for some consideration. We will continue to do more detailed work, but this morning I wanted to ensure that this committee understood how aligned we are with the recommendations that came out of the citizens jury report. Most of the recommendations around the LRT project, there were some that dealt with broader transportation and transit issues. Obviously, the LRT office will not be dealing with those, but most of the recommendations were about LRT and how we communicate and engage people through the next 7 or 8 years. We feel that our approach that you'll hear about in just a few minutes aligns with the guiding principles of the citizen jury, and their recommendations around communications are not only ones that we've included in our approach, they're ones that we were already very much aligned with. We realize that advice and community input onto the design of the LRT will be incorporated where it can be, and we will work very hard to ensure that people understand the role that they can play in shaping LRT in Hamilton, and also some of those pieces that will be provided more on an informational basis. It was recommended by the jury that we undertake some market research and evaluation and report back on that progress. They suggested an annual report card. I will say that right now we're thinking about the best way to continue to do that evaluation and reporting back to this committee, to council, and to the broader community. But I can also tell you for sure that we'll be undertaking market research as we move forward with this project. We believe that the messaging around LRT really needs to begin very much aligned with the overall rapid transit vision that you heard about in terms of how it'll benefit and change Hamilton. And we feel that there's at least 4 pillars that we need to continue to be talking about each and every time we share the conversation around LRT. From an economic development perspective, the evidence is quite clear that LRT can be part of the toolkit around economic development in this community. It will stimulate economic growth, and we'll do that in even better ways if we combine those with the kind of pieces of work we're doing already, which include the rezoning along that corridor to ensure that we can match our zoning regime alongside with what we would like to see from the LRT. Some interesting research that came out of an LRT projects, and they looked at a variety around North America. One of the concluding factors around economic development and where those LRT projects had the most potential for transit-oriented development occurred when the LRT ran through an already revitalizing downtown and could extend that revitalization to other parts of the community. And of course, that is precisely what we're doing here in Hamilton. We need to be clear that this is not the only piece of economic development that's going on in the city. There is lots that is also happening, and this will be a piece of that puzzle. But LRT, beyond what will happen on the corridor, can also be a driver for attracting business to this community. Great transit means that we're a great city to be marketing from an economic perspective. Environmentally, LRT is clean and green. The near zero emissions that come from LRT are something to be considered. As we know, the corridor, particularly the east-west corridor that the LRT runs along, is now a high-traffic corridor for transit already. And think about in the next 20 to 30 to 40 years how much more that would be necessary. And LRT represents an environmentally clean way of doing that. This is part of the development of a high-quality, safe, and sustainable transportation option for our citizens. As I mentioned before, it is one piece of the puzzle that we have in our transportation plans. Not only the Rapid Ready work that's already occurred, our 10-year transportation master plan, all of those pieces need to come to fruition, and LRT can be a major part of that. And of course, what's really important, not only to our friends at Metrolinx, but to many citizens in our community, is that this links us in with transportation in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. The fact that this will connect us with GO Service, the fact that we do have GO Service that is ever expanding, and we hope will continue to expand in this community, is important. Also important that it integrates with a variety of different transportation modalities so that the pedestrians, the bike network that we have in this community, traffic and goods movement all work together seamlessly as this community continues to develop and evolve. So to move on to some of the specifics about how we get these messages out and how we continue to engage in both the practicalities of building LRT in the community, but also building and inspiring, and to steal some words from our delegation who spoke before, to inspire people around what this can become, we have been building a communications team. I've already introduced Kelly and Jamie, who work with us from Metrolinx. Of course, Andrew Hope and myself have a great deal of interaction on a daily basis around communications. Marie Fitzpatrick is with us somewhere. She is our communications officer, and we will be telling you more about the corridor engagement coordinator, who is going to be hired to help us do some specific outreach to businesses and residents who live along the corridor where the LRT will be built. This is a collaborative effort. There is a Hamilton voice to this. And very early on, Metrolinx was really clear that wherever possible, that the voice that should be coming forward is the voice of this community. This is our city, and this is a piece of infrastructure that will support our community for many decades to come. Metrolinx will, on occasion, as you know, need to be stepping forward and communicating some messages themselves. They, at the end of the day, will be responsible for items such as the procurement of this project, and so at certain times, Metrolinx will very much be out in front. But in terms of the process we're in now, through the EA process, looking at the design of the LRT, engaging with our community, the Hamilton voice will be front and center, with always our Metrolinx partners in the room with us. So it's a real pleasure to work with our friends at Metrolinx, and without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Kelly to take you through some of the next steps in terms of our communication.
Thank you, Paul. So the next slide is just looking at basically what we want to achieve over the next several months as we start our communication efforts. So as Mark and Hélène alluded to in their presentation, we're anticipating that there are many people in this community who have varying degrees of awareness about the project. Some people might not even know what LRT stands for, might not know what the vehicles are going to look like. They're asking if it's similar to a subway or a GO train. So we're going to spend a lot of time just building awareness in the community about that. We do know there's a lot of people who have been following this project through the rapid transit planning days in the early stages, and they'll know a lot more about it, but we really want to, in the early stages of our communication strategy, focus on just building general awareness in the community. And as Paul mentioned earlier, we're going to conduct some market research. We're probably going to start that this summer, and that will help us establish a baseline, and we'll just get a sense of what the perceptions are and the awareness in the community, and then we can check back in every year or two and just see how well we're doing, and it can help inform our strategy and our messaging. So we're looking at a phased approach for our communication strategy. So for the purposes of today's presentation, we're going to be focusing mostly on the immediate needs. So looking at the next 12 months, getting through the preliminary design and the EA addendum process. But we're going to also touch on the medium-term and longer-term phases of the project. So medium-term would be getting the community ready for the construction process, and longer-term between 2019 and 2024 is the actual construction period. That will be a really heavy communication time as well, and also getting people ready for when the LRT is in service at the end of that period. We've also listed some of the major stakeholder groups for you, just to give you an idea. City staff and Metrolinx staff met late last year we went through an extensive stakeholder mapping process, so this is just a snapshot of the major stakeholder groups for your reference, but we have quite a list. We wanted to include a slide on the engagement that we've done to date since the funding announcement. So while we've been building our team, we've also been out meeting and having some preliminary discussions with the BIAs, the Chamber of Commerce. We've been briefing council, we've been briefing this committee, and live streaming the meetings. So there's been some early work that's been happening already. We also had the light rail vehicle on display at Supercrawl last fall, and it was on display here at City Hall as well. So there has been some engagement, and we're kind of ready to start the next phase, which is going to begin in May. This is when the community will have the first look at the preliminary design before we start the EA addendum process in the fall. So we're planning on scheduling an LRT subcommittee meeting in early May, and that would be the formal launch of the design. And we'll be giving people a sense of what this is going to look like. So we'll be preparing renderings and animation videos so that people can see where the LRT will run on the street, where the cars will go, where people will get on and off, that kind of thing, so that they can really see how this is going to look. And we'll be sharing that through a number of channels as well, and we'll make sure that this committee and the rest of the council has all the information as well so that you're ready to answer questions from the community. So business engagement is going to be a significant part of our strategy. We've heard from this group as well that that's important to you. So we are taking a specific approach along the corridor. We are hiring a corridor engagement coordinator who's going to recruit and train paid community members to go out and visit each affected property, and we're estimating there's about 1,000 along the corridor, so that gives you an idea of the magnitude of how many properties there are to see. So they'll be making personal connections with these property owners, sharing general information about the project, gathering feedback and documenting it. And I'll be managing this process, so we'll be in close contact with that group and hearing what they're saying, and if they have questions, we'll make sure that they get answered by the right person, whether it's somebody on our technical team in the LRT project, or if it's somebody else in planning or Hamilton Water or something like that. We'll make sure that they get the answers they need. So this is something new that we're doing. We're planning on going out twice a year for the duration of the project, and we'll make sure that the community members are branded somehow so that they have visibility in the community and people know that they're coming. And the last bullet on here is about additional outreach to property owners. We wanted to include this because we know that sometimes the property owner and the business owner are different people, so we want to send registered letters to property owners as well to make sure that they're all aware. Sometimes they don't live in Hamilton. The environmental assessment addendum process will be starting in the fall. So this is the community's chance to provide formal input into the process. And we'll be having traditional public information centers in September and January. But we realize that not everybody has time to come to these kinds of meetings or wants to come to these kind of meetings. So we're looking at scheduling a teletown hall so people can call in from the comfort of their home and get information. We also want to go where the people are, festivals and events, farmers markets, trails, things like that. The Transportation Master Plan Outreach Group did this last summer and found a lot of success with it, so we want to follow a similar model. So the end of that process will be about this time next year when the group submits the environmental project report. So community engagement is going to be important as well, and I'm going to turn it over to Jamie now from Metrolinx to talk a bit about their experience with some Toronto projects.
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks, Paul, and good morning, everyone. I thought I'd just pick up on a couple of themes that Paul had presented off the top that I think are really important for Metrolinx and underscores, I think, where we're all coming from on this project here. Paul talked about the spirit of collaboration, how we're working together and how we're working aligned to get this project delivered. And I think that nothing perhaps speaks more an example of that right off the bat is how we're hiring, how we're each building up our teams to deliver this project. So one of the first hires that we had to make at Metrolinx for this particular role is a manager of community relations and communications, and so had a job description drafted, and we posted it at the same time City of Hamilton was posting the same kind of job for the LRT project. And as you might expect with a terrific project and two great organizations, the amount of interest we got in in this role was unbelievable. Hundreds of applications and some really, really high-quality people. So Andrew Hope and I did our interviewing at Metrolinx about a month and a half ago, Andrew, I think, when we originally did those. And one of the candidates we came into this meeting, into our meeting, a little flushed. She'd driven all the way from Hamilton and had raced to downtown Toronto where we were conducting our interviews. And it turns out she had just come from an interview with the City of Hamilton, LRT folks, Paul, on this particular role. And so we were really excited, Andrew and I, we interviewed Kelly Anderson, and we thought, this is terrific. She's our #1 candidate, preferred candidate. We're going to hire Metrolinx, and she's going to come work on the LRT project. So after that, we spoke to Paul and spoke to Quab and others, and they said, well, Kelly's our #1 too. And so the good news is that the bad news for Metrolinx is that we didn't get to hire Kelly. The terrific news for all of us is that Kelly's going to continue to work on the project and is working with as the City of Hamilton person. On that particular role for Metrolinx, we've done some further interviews, and we're going to be making an offer to another individual in the next few days, and so continue to staff up. And so it just talks about that sort of spirit of collaboration, thinking the same way of the kind of people, the kind of needs I think we want to bring to bear on this project, which is terrific. The other thing that I'd like to mention sort of off the top too was it was really interesting, I think, to hear the presentation prior to this by the delegation and Mark and Elaine. And I sort of leaned over to Kelly during this presentation. I said, have you seen their presentation? She said, no, but I mean, there's a lot of great communication. And I think that Andrew said that he'd met with Elaine, I think, yesterday. And I said, geez, I really hope he's thinking. I thought to myself, God, I hope he's thinking the same things we are in terms of what needs to be done in terms of communication and engagement. So, Elaine, hopefully you're seeing that we're totally aligned on what we're doing here in terms of building awareness, building the support. What I like to say is the next period of time, as Kelly described, is call it that sort of 20,000-foot air war that we've got to get out there to build awareness and build support of the projects. And as we continue to move closer to being in construction, that's when we get the boots on the ground, the community office is opened, and move it along. So with those sort of introductions, I'll just talk to you a little bit about our community engagement activities. And I think it's important to know that we're not just talking, and I think it's important for Metrolinx, and I know it's exactly the same way from the LRT project team. We're not just talking about the alignment here. We're not just talking about where the LRT is going. This is a city building project, so we're going to be engaging the entire community. The level of engagement may differ and may be more intense along the alignment, but certainly we're absolutely committed to making sure that we're engaging everyone in the community, because this is a community project. So we're going to be doing lots of stakeholder presentations and meetings, ward meetings and updates. Kelly talked about the displays at the City Hall, and when we brought our LRT out here, we're looking for opportunities to bring the LRT back here again. We've got to build that awareness. We've got to build support. We have to, people, as Elaine said, have to understand that an LRT is not a streetcar and it's not a subway. So people have to be informed about what an LRT is and what an LRT isn't. And so that's really important as part of this. Again, lots of outreach, lots of visibility at festivals, events across the city. Website and social media, obviously critical in terms of communicating about a project of this very nature, become even more critical as we move into construction, and so people see what's taking place, when and where, and how we're working to mitigate issues. Project newsletter, and then again the storefront presence that we all know is so critical. And so that's one of the things that we've sort of said we're not doing that right now, but probably right when we get into our procurement phase, the early communications activities, so that's the phase that we're working in right now. It's really what I would sort of say that informing, educating, building awareness and support for the project. We'll be sharing the preliminary design elements with stakeholders in the public, and then getting their general reaction to the before the formal EA process begins in the fall. In the green bars there, you see the timing for the anticipated timing for the beginning and the ending of the environmental assessment. And then we've got the pre-consultation phase. And so it's during this period where we continue to ramp up the communications activities. It's at this period of time that we begin to establish the community offices and do some local hiring, get those boots on the ground well in advance of construction beginning and during the construction phase, because it really shifts a lot from, call it community communications down to more community relations boots on the ground. So in terms of working with various stakeholder groups, obviously working with businesses during construction is absolutely huge and critical. We know that. Had the pleasure so far of beginning to work with and build some relationships with the Chamber of Commerce, and which is terrific. I think we've had a couple of meetings with the International Village BIA, which has been great in terms of building those relationships, and we look forward to building and forming relationships. I know the city's got a lot of relationships with the existing chambers of commerce, BIAs. We really have to get that as well as Metrolinx. And I think that the one thing is that when we come to those meetings and we're invited to meet with folks, it's not just we're working in lockstep here. You're always going to see Paul, you're always going to see Andrew, you're always going to see Kelly or me or whoever. So you're going to see again a real collaborative effort here between Metrolinx and the city. In other areas, the most critical element of this, of course, is the community relations, the communications. We want to make sure that there's no surprises. We're going to provide as much information as far in advance to businesses so that they understand what is going to take place, when it's going to take place, for how long it's going to take place, and what we can possibly do to mitigate some of those impacts. And building on some of the things that we've done in other jurisdictions and other projects it's those regular meetings of the various folks who can collectively look at the issues that are caused by construction and look at possible solutions. And so that's where you bring in various city transportation folks, the local councillors, police services, tracking traffic and parking enforcement, really to come up with solutions to the challenges that we're going to be facing. On the flip side of that, so I would sort of say it's at least two sides in terms of how we work with the business community. For example, it's mitigating the impact during construction or in advance of construction, but it's also how we support businesses. And so one of the things that we're doing a lot of work with on the Eglinton Crosstown, and that we want to do here in Hamilton, is working with a business community to come up with a business support program that works. We've looked at best practices not only in the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, but in North America in terms of how we can support business. And so we've done some really neat and innovative things in Toronto. We're going to continue to do more of that. So it's not just having those fully staffed community offices working directly with the business and the local community. We have the business support program, which can include different types of marketing efforts, actual direct financial support for various BIAs to help them with their programs, their festivals, and things like that. All of which, again, we're not going to build, what I'm saying is that we're not going to just come in there and unveil a program. We want to work with the business community, work with the local community, work with the local councillors to build a program that works and that we can all be proud of and that Neil is going to be great. Community benefits is another issue that I just wanted to touch on in my presentation this morning, and it's an issue which is significantly growing within Metrolinx projects and significantly growing within the province and even at the federal government. It's the whole raison d'etre that when we're investing all these significant dollars in large capital infrastructure projects, is that how do we make sure that the local community benefits as much as possible. So we all know at the end of the day the community is going to have a terrific transit project, but again we know it's going to be tough to get from where we are now to get that project developed and implemented. So we want to make sure that those communities benefit wherever possible. And so it's in terms of the benefits, it's in terms of jobs, it's in terms of apprenticeships, and it's in terms of social procurement. So we're working really hard on this and our other Metrolinx projects, and so they're further advanced and they're a little bit further in terms of the guinea pigs. But we've got actually within those programs, we've written actually into the project agreements with our private sector consortium who are building these projects for us, that the fact that they have to come forward with specific community benefits programs, apprenticeship programs, local procurement opportunities, they have to come forward with these programs that we ultimately at Metrolinx and Infrastructure Ontario have to approve. And so probably looking at that type of model moving forward again as well. We did, I wasn't able to attend that meeting, but I know that Andrew and colleagues had met with anchor institutions back in September, and that's the type of organizations and the type of groups that we want to continue to work with as we build a community benefits program for the Hamilton LRT project. And I'm going to turn it over to Paul at this point.
Just in closing, it's important to recognize that there are other engagement projects which impact our work, some at a high level and some at a more practical level. And some of those are listed for you here. For instance, our community visioning, lots of talk of transportation and transit in general, and some conversation about LRT specifically. And it's important as we have a community vision with a threshold of 25 years that we ensure some alignment here. West Harbour, in terms of its relationship and development to the GO station at West Harbour and the LRT that will move north. We need to ensure that that's there. I want to focus for just a minute around the transportation master planning exercise and the update to that that's happening, and the LRT zoning that's happening at the LRT corridor zoning that's happening at the same time. In conversations with Jason and in conversations with John Mader, both first in his role as director and now his role as acting general manager, there has been lots of discussions about how we bring those pieces of work together. We don't want to miss things, and the timing of all of those pieces is that they're happening within the same few months. So we're not talking about a couple of years out here. It's all happening within the same few months. And we'll be providing you with a bit of a breakdown within the next couple of weeks of the timing of that so that it all can align. You know, on the first service date, when LRT is in operation, we need traffic, car traffic to be moving in this city. We need goods to be moving in this city. We need pedestrians and cyclists to understand how they're moving in the city. We need transit to be moving in the city. And so the more we can do to ensure that that's happening, and then at the same time to ensure that the zoning work that's going on is encouraging the kind of development that we want to see. We need to make sure we're doing the upfront work so we don't miss something as we move along. So I want to assure this committee, because I know these issues come up in different subcommittees or different standing committees. I want you to know that between the Planning and Economic Development Department and Public Works, we are trying to figure out exactly how that alignment can occur, and so that the timing wise you're getting information where you're not asking questions and then hearing the answer, well, we don't know yet, we'll get to you in the next couple of months. We need to integrate that work. We recognize that, and we will continue to do that. So that was a little bit of a longer presentation, but what we've heard consistently from you is you want to know more of the details of how communication will unfold and how we will be engaging both specifically and in terms of what some of those messages look like. So we wanted to walk you through that today. I think you get the benefit of understanding from Metrolink some of the work that they've done in the past, and I know that you'll also join me. And this was Kelly's first presentation to a committee of council after all these years of being involved, so I thought did a pretty good job too. So I'll end with that, and we're here to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul, Kelly, and Jamie. First on the list is Mayor Fred.
Thank you very much for that thorough report, and congratulations to all. And Kelly, I can't believe that's the first time, but anyway, well done, great job, and a very thorough report. And I do appreciate that the message has gotten through. And I know you've been saying this right from the very beginning that communications is the big issue as we move forward, and that's certainly reflected in the document today. I wanted to touch on just a few things. One of them is the citizens' jury report, and I was hoping it was going to be on the agenda because I think we certainly endorse the guiding principles that report talked about, and I don't see it here, but I would certainly like to be able to do that. So maybe at the right time, Mr. Chair, we could endorse the work of at least the guiding principles of the citizens jury recommendations that you're clearly adopting as part of your communication strategy and your rollout. So I think that's a very positive thing, and I want to compliment them again on some great work that they did going forward. So I'm not sure if that was your intent to not have them here, but I thought that the whole issue was referred to this committee. Laurie?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is on a future agenda item. I believe that staff were working on a formal report and presentation to bring forward, so that would be at the next meeting for sure.
Okay, good to know. Well, notwithstanding that, I think it wouldn't be bad for us to endorse those guiding principles nonetheless. The second issue is, and I heard a lot of on the construction phase in terms of communication. I think that's that's helpful. But I do think that we need to consider communicating with property owners, and business is one aspect of it, and certainly there are some residential property owners, multi-residential as well as some single, that could all benefit from, well in advance, some information about the impacts and the opportunities that come out of LRT. So I didn't hear a lot about kind of the advance work of along the corridor specifically, and I know it can get a little ridiculous. I mean, there are a lot of property owners within 500 feet of this thing, but on the immediate corridor where certainly where the majority of the business impact might be and the majority of the opportunity, there are also a number of other property owners that could reach. So I'm hopeful that we're hearing that now we're going to be reaching out to those folks rather than just ahead of construction phase, because I think that may be too little too late. Paul, could you address that, please?
Through the chair to the mayor, the short answer is absolutely we will. It starts in May, and we'll continue the formal process of ensuring we have a conversation with every property owner, both residential as well as business owner along that corridor, because there are both. That
you really need to kind of start thinking about changing the dynamic location there, and think about how you might attract people to come there through, some special event or some other means. I know that in places I've visited around the world through CUI, a number of major cities actually shut down their inner city corridors on weekends through the summertime, just to change the dynamic, create an opportunity to have an event, and or just encourage people to come and look and pedestrianize a location that previously has otherwise been considered kind of a highway traffic corridor. In the Ukraine and Kiev, they do it regularly throughout the summertime. And my suggestion is that we at least look at, maybe through this approach, considering some events like that through the downtown on a couple of occasions through the summertime, starting sooner rather than later. I really think it's an opportunity for both the BIAs, and I'm certainly interested in hearing what their thoughts are, to create something that brings people downtown and creates opportunities for business to thrive more than they are today, and hopefully they're all doing reasonably well, but could always be better. And to start kind of laying out the dynamic of a pedestrian corridor along there that I think would be beneficial, not just for the short term, but hopefully for the longer term. And having said that, I know many people that I talk to throughout the city that live in the mountain or Ancaster or in Waterdown that haven't been to downtown Hamilton in 30 years. And I'd like to be able
Chair to the mayor, we're happy to look at any and all ideas which do a few things. One is to encourage people to learn more about this project, and in general how we're trying to change the community and engage people in varieties of transportation. Encourage people to come downtown and experience the downtown that we know is taking on some great life. So we're happy to look at any and all options that do that. I think it also can help educate people as to some of the elements to come. And I think the perfect time to do that is, once we see here are the preliminary design elements, here's what it's going to look like in terms of the recommended options for our LRT, is to then think how we can get some of these things happening sooner rather than later. And the last thing I'll say is that, we need the voices of many. Our idea on an event may not work for others. So how does this fit in with what not only downtown businesses want, but other special events and how it impacts those? So there's an openness, absolutely, to do whatever this committee and others feel is important.
Well, that's a good thought, and I know I'm just kind of throwing that out there as an idea, and certainly would be interested in hearing more from others that obviously would have some thoughts on that as well. But my thought is LRT days downtown, I think, would be an opportunity for us to do both, attract more people to come downtown and learn about the future of transportation in our community. So I think it's an idea that's worthy of exploration and some discussion. So I look forward to hearing what others might think about that. But thank you for a great report. As you know, the support for LRT is growing, and I think there's a lot of support out there. But there are also a lot of questions and a lot of comments from folks that we hear on a regular basis. So how we communicate that and stay open to addressing all of those, I think, is critical for us moving forward. And I know that's a commitment you have and that Metrolinx has, and certainly this council has. So I look forward to next steps. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. I'm going to come back to you on the 7 guiding principles received by GIC 3-4 weeks ago from the citizens jury, and I'll ask Lori in advance, maybe you could just track them down, give them a copy for the task force to look at in advance of the mayor's motion. Again, those are the 7 guiding principles of that document we received, I think it was 3 weeks ago. Okay, next up, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and Paul, welcome, and welcome to Kelly. It sounds to me, Jamie, like if you both like the same candidate, they should have one communication person for both agencies, and then you get a very consistent message. But just a suggestion, then you can double Kelly's salary too. Paul, I heard Kelly say during the presentation, conveyed in that story accurate?
Through the chair, the information we're just as concerned and quite frankly upset about the pieces that go out. Throughout this process, we've been sharing information with a small group of people to help build the right design. So the information is old information, as best as we can tell. It came out of some preliminary conversations on design. The design continues to be tweaked and honed as we move along. And there are also elements that are not included in what came out. So, we still have routing issues around the north piece of this and exactly how that will run. The operating maintenance and storage facility information still needs to be finished, and there's a design element to that that's really important for the operation of LRT as well as the acquisition of property for that facility. So, like everything else, there's certainly elements in there that no doubt will find its way there. We've been pretty clear from the beginning that we've been looking at the previous design of LRT and trying to understand how we can improve upon that to achieve a rapid, reliable, and safe service for this. So that has impacted our designs, and that's been a philosophy that we've been working on through this process, and that's what we're going to be coming forward with a recommendation. So there's lots of pieces that aren't in there. There's lots of pieces that are still in flux. I would say some of the information is not accurate to the latest designs. I'm as frustrated as anyone else, but I'll tell you, the only way you can build the right project is to involve people in this and have them chime in with, here's what I think you're missing, here's how I think this can be better. The answer with that is that, more people than fewer have access to that information, and it was unfortunate. We're not trying to hold anything back, but we really believe this, and we've had lots of discussions. Dave and Christine and I in particular have had lots of discussions to say we need to get feedback based on here is what we're recommending as a design, to which there will be lots of things that we'll have to look at and change potentially as it moves forward. But it's better to see that whole than be debating, for instance, things, we saw a picture today, and I love the engagement, the early engagement work that's happening, but we saw pictures today and conversation today about an operating maintenance and storage facility when we're not there yet. That whether that's the recommendation or not, we haven't brought that forward. So we're now going to have a debate about a location and a property that may or may not be where we're headed. And those are the things that frustrate us a little bit. I understand everybody wants to see it, but as late as a couple weeks ago, we're still saying, go back and make a few changes to our consultant who's building those design elements. I know that's a long answer. Some elements, of course, are there. We've shared some of these in the past, and people are saying, well, the bridge is a new thing. Well, the bridge over the 403 was a design element in the previous piece of work, so if that's in or not in, we've seen that before. These aren't wild ideas that are coming out of left field, but there are pieces that are both inaccurate given the current designs we're at, and things that we just prefer to have come to you in the next 4 weeks when we're ready to see it all, and then let's have the conversation as a community.
So, as a team leader then, there was clearly a breakdown somewhere in communications. Are you able to plug that hole so that we don't mislead the public if the information wasn't accurate?
So through the chair, we've done a few things. The information did not come officially from the LRT office, so let's just be clear about that. What we've done from a security perspective is try and understand where it came from. Some of the elements came out of looking at the design, the early designs. It's clear, just that information. So we've done some security work around that. I don't like sending out notes that sound negative and sound punitive, but we had to do that as well. Our next meetings of those working groups will have to have a reminder session about the code of conduct that we all sign as staff around this project. None of those things are exactly where Dave or I want to spend our time. Dave is putting a tremendous amount of work in with his team on the technical side to build a design. And I think it's fair to say, Dave, we're not talking out of turn here, that there are just changes that keep coming regularly to this design, and we need to get those finalized and then present this to you. So we're trying our best to ensure this doesn't happen again. We want this to happen through the committee and the subcommittee and then go to the community in a concerted way. And that's only about 4 or 5 weeks away from us now.
And on to council, because, the last thing you need is for a location to be suggested for the maintenance facility. As we saw with the CN site for the stadium, the price went from 15 million to 80 million. As soon as they saw the city had an interest in it. And so it can become very expensive if this information gets out to the public also, because any prudent businessman sees a city, a government's interested in this property, you know what's going to happen to the price. And, okay, I've made my point on that. And the other thing, Paul, and I've talked to you offline about this, this is the second time I've seen the schedule going up showing a 2019 construction start. We had a Gantt chart at our last meeting that showed through you, Mr. Chairman, that the award would be in the spring with an early summer start of construction in 2018 because of the election cycle. There will be a lot of negativity that'll grow as we get ready to hit the ground and you get election campaign going. There'll be a lot of candidates try to get elected by saying, I'll kill LRT. And we saw that happen with the Red Oak Creek Expressway. We saw that happen with the Ottawa LRT, where they actually had the contract awarded, but nothing in the ground, and it cost taxpayers a lot of money. Have we now conceded the construction will start in 2019 rather than June of 2018?
Through the chair, no, we're still working towards the financial close in the mid part of 2018, which as you've raised many times and agreed, some elements may begin in late 2018. There's no doubt about it. I think our phraseology has always been that major construction would start in 2019. These high-level bar charts are it's tough to describe nuance, but what we'll take away from this is we need to have a bit of that overlap, because I think we're talking major construction, which we've always talked about. 2019 is when that will begin in earnest. But you are quite right. Nothing has changed from that original piece. Middle part of 2018, we want to be ready to get going on this. That's what Metrolinx continues to suggest to me, and Andrew's nodding, so nothing's changed over the Easter weekend. So we're still moving on that.
Demolition will go first, and that's a messy operation. That'll be done with very little design, because you know what you have to demolish, and that could probably be done in 2018. So I think it's helpful if you move that chart back to what we agreed on, which was a late spring start of construction in 2018. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson, thank you. Councillor Marula.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Paul, just on the concerns surrounding the communications part, as well as the understanding of the public and how it's going to impact them. As we've spoken about for some time now, I think a lot of people are understating the impact. I think there's an underestimated understanding of how it's going to impact not only businesses, but residents and traffic flow and so on. So through you, Mr. Chairman, understanding that there is going to be a significant amount of collateral damage, and coming to an agreement that we will have that, understanding who might be impacted. You and I discussed the possibility of having that so-called adult discussion with some businesses and saying, folks, you're not going to survive this, hence you should look at a business plan to accommodate yourself to basically stay alive if you decide to retain the existing locations. That's the type of discussion I think we need to have sooner rather than later. So I'm hoping that we can get to the meat of that matter soon, and that we can, through that outreach program, address that. I know that there will be a sign-off on understanding the magnitude of it all. Also, as we discussed through you, Mr. Chairman, trial periods, I think that we should establish. We should schedule, I think, 7 days between, before the road closes, where we literally close the road on a trial basis, the extent of which the schedule. So it should coincide with what the schedule will be for construction. Close those segments of the stretch so that the flow of traffic is understood, the impacts are understood, but more importantly, people can plan ahead. I know through you, Mr. Chairman, that regardless of what we do communications-wise, there is going to be a significant amount of people that have no clue about this project and will only become aware of it when they can't go to their regular Tim Hortons on that morning when the road's closed. And at which time, all hell is going to break loose, and we're going to be shocked that they're not aware of it, but the reality is that they're not going to be aware of it. So I say we put a schedule together that we go through a trial. 7, they say 7 is the magic number of addressing memory. I think seven trial periods, test runs, would be appropriate. When that occurs is up to you, or you and your staff, what you determine. But we really need to do this openly, transparently, aggressively, and not in any way try to deceive anyone that this is going to be easy. I went through the expressway debate and construction, and this will be, well, that pales in comparison. Let's put it that way. It's not going to be even a comparison. So we need to really, really get ahead of that. I don't know how much I can emphasize that, but at the appropriate time, I will move that we, through you, Mr. Chairman, address the trial periods. And I just want you to elaborate on, I know we had that discussion about how we could perhaps move along those lines.
So through the chair, first things first, we will be starting, as I say, May, June, getting out, having that one-on-one conversation with everybody. It will be clear information, clear about what's happening, and driving home, not in a way that's fear into people's hearts, but is clarity and, to your point, real honest pieces about what's going to come and the time frame for that. So a bit to Councillor Ferguson's point about we need to be clear, it can't be mushiness about whether it's sort of 2018 or 2019, because that's a big difference in terms of the life of a business. So let's get out with some clear information about that, and we will ensure that that happens. Second piece about trials, I think one of the pieces we want to make sure comes forward before we would look at any of those is the traffic impact work that is going on, and that work will continue through to the end of the summer. It will be part of our public information that comes out in September, and then that gives us the time to understand what we feel the traffic flow looks like from a variety of modalities, and then we can go and say, do we want to look at how we test drive some of this and come back to the committee for your understanding of how that might look. So a commitment again is there to try things that make sense. We'll bring them back here and say, does this look like something we can do on the route piece and what might happen during construction and then post-construction into service date. I think we really would like to first understand some of the traffic impact study work, bring that back here, which would then allow us to understand how that would look from a trial perspective, if that's acceptable to this group.
So at the appropriate time, I think, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is just direct staff to come back with a feasibility plan of a trial closure based on the same principles of the construction schedule, so that people can basically have an understanding of what parts of the roads will be closed, how it impacts them, and how they can address that through their own means of accommodating, planning their own route to and from work, to and from dropping their kids off school, so they can actually live it. All the studies in the world means nothing until you actually are subjected to it in practicality. Hence, that's where I'm headed. I'd like to provide that notice accordingly, and I thank you very much for your time.
I'll come back to you, Councillor, and the clerks are just passing around the Citizens Jury on Transit 7 recommendations. The mayor has advised that he's willing to wait until the next LRT subcommittee meeting to move his motion, but I will come back to you, and then you can move forward with your presentation as you suggested you wanted to do at the next meeting anyway. Councillor?
Provide that as a notice today. I will work with Paul on the wording for our next meeting.
Very good. So we'll come back to you with the notice of motion then, or do you want to just come back to us next meeting? Okay, very good. Keenan.
I support the trial closures, actually. suggested by the mayor and by Councilor Marula. Every time we've shut down a street in this community over the last few years, it's done nothing but bring a ton of people out to those streets and created a festival-like atmosphere. I want to thank the presenters today for this. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into this, and we are very supportive. Welcome, Kelly, to the project. As you know, our LRT task force has been talking about this very thing. What sort of role can we play in this overall communications process? We're
Handle that question, Mr. Chair.
Repeat the question, Keenan.
The question is, what is the scope of the addendum itself, just so that we can have some advance warning on the types of issues that we're going to be dealing with at this committee.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the scope of the EA is firstly to review issues that were presented as part of the provincial announcement, the funding announcement. So, for example, the termination of the eastern portion at Queenston Traffic Circle rather than Eastgate. So we now have the end-of-line terminal to look at, which is a component of the addendum. We also need to look at the design to ensure that we're getting the best, most reliable transit project that we can. Oh, one more item through you, Mr. Chair, is the maintenance and storage facility was not fully included in the original EA and TPAP, and we need to fulfill the EA requirements for the maintenance and storage facility.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chair, the transportation issues that were leaked in the last couple of weeks, are they part of the addendum as well?
Well, through the chair, I can answer this. The design that comes forward, the recommended design, is what goes forward through the EA process. So, as I say, some of that information is out of date and inaccurate in terms of what I've seen as the latest designs. So that piece, and there were some pieces that have not been put in the press yet. As Christine mentioned, we have an A-line route and we have an operating maintenance and storage facility piece that we need to include in there. So those are all pieces that will be there.
So the entire transportation corridor in the lower city, pretty much, because the LRT corridor is 800 meters on both ends, is that correct? That's going to be a part of in the scope of the EA addendum?
Some of the scoping to study around traffic impact, but we won't be making recommendations in terms of, we'll make recommendations in terms of how traffic needs to flow and the impacts of that, and the solutions will be built through the EA process to any areas that reference that. But in terms of a broader look at all sorts of other issues, remember this is the EA process for the LRT project in and of itself.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I got myself on the list. Councillor Johnson, if you could take the chair. And still to come, Susan Braithwaite from International Village, Aaron as well from the Flamborough.
Please go ahead, Councillor.
Okay. Jamie, I got a few questions for you. I was happy to have you part of the engagement conversation today as a delegate and representative of Metrolink, beyond a delegate, I guess I could say. You had said in your presentation in Hamilton, we're going to carry out some different and unique tactics. You referenced one, but you pluralized tactic. So the one that you referenced is one I think we're all going to be proud of, and that's the door-to-door, correct, through you, Mr. Chair, twice a year talking to everybody on the line. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Any others that you can share today? Different and unique tactics that you haven't embraced in other jurisdictions?
I think Mr. Chair, I think the point that I was trying to get across is that we look at Hamilton as a totally unique and different project than other ones that we're working on. So we're totally open to new and different ideas and things like that. And so, aside from the one that we've got that we've identified, that we've discussed, I can't think of any off the top. But that's not to say that as we move forward here, that there won't be a plural, new and distinct and different tactics employed here than we would in our other projects so far.
You've heard a few good suggestions, I think, from our committee while standing and since your address. One was advanced street closures. Have you done that in past, just to get the public used to a change in traffic patterns?
No, we haven't. In the other projects that, other LRT projects, whether it's the Eglinton to Crosstown or, which is where we've done most of our work, and certainly planning ahead for Finch and here in Ontario, we haven't done those in advance. And what I was sharing with Paul and Kelly is that I mentioned in my presentation how things have unfolded with the Eglinton Crosstown is that we do all the work up front to try and anticipate what the issues are going to be with the and the impacts on residents, bicyclists, cyclists, the whole community from when we implement a particular traffic management plan and put that in place for during construction. And so we anticipate what we think are going to be the impacts. We roll that out, communicate that well in advance. So how we communicate that in Toronto now is a minimum 14 days in advance that will let the community know exactly what's taking place. But that's when it's really going to, when we a firm date to happen. We actually back it up to 6 months and then 3 months and then 14 days before it gets implemented. And after it gets implemented, in every case that we found, there's some tweaking that has to take place. And so that was where we have that meeting that I mentioned, that where you bring all the various key stakeholders and the decision makers at that table, councillors, MPPs, city transportation folks, public works, Toronto, in our case, Toronto Police Service or parking enforcement folks. And that's where we put all the issues on the table and look at mitigating them wherever possible. So for example, we knew that, and I'll give you a Toronto example, we knew that around Eglinton Avenue and Allen Road, there ended up being a lot of traffic infiltration into the local neighborhoods, people trying to avoid Eglinton Avenue. And so what we did was we worked with all the stakeholders to sort of, change parking regulations. And so in the case of their relaxing them in the residential neighborhoods, so people could park longer if they wanted to shop along Eglinton Avenue. We also knew that it was creating issues for folks, and so we would change where people could drive in turning restrictions, left turns, right turns, and things like that. All sorts of things. And so, long answer is that we haven't done that, but to be quite frankly, it seems like a very interesting idea that I think that the team would be well to have a real close look at. And that's the kind of idea that I'd take back and sort of say, geez, maybe we could try this along Finch Avenue and some of our other projects. And so go from there.
Oh, it's good to hear. Thank you. One final thing, Jamie, while you're up there, you talked about how you implemented in, I think it was 2013, when you work with your contractors, they're obligated to hire, I think you said there was community benefit programs attached.
That's correct.
And that would take place here in Hamilton at the appropriate time once these contractors are secured through you, Mr. Deputy Chair.
Yeah. So how it's worked in Toronto and this is really where we're getting some good experience there, is that the whole concept of community benefits really comes out of the United States, California, and other jurisdictions like that, where they baked these community benefits agreements right into agreements with contractors. And so this is a growing issue within the province of Ontario. There's been some legislation passed last spring that is addressing these whole issue of community benefits. And so what we have in our agreements for both the Crosstown project and the Finch project is that within 6 months of financial close, the contractors have to come forward with very specific plans as it relates to jobs and apprenticeships and local hiring. And so in the case of the Crosstown, the contractor's done that. And now we're in sort of a period of a bit of a to and the fro because, from the perspective of Metrolinx and Infrastructure Ontario, we want to make sure that these plans are as robust as possible. You have a lot of stakeholder groups that want to have, are really interested and committed to having real specific targets about about the amount of investment or the number of jobs and apprenticeships and things like that. And that's some things that we're really working forward to sort of see how that can sort of work under our existing contractual agreements that we've got in place. And so the commitment is there, and we're really working together with the community to make sure that, again, comes back to wherever possible that we're making a significant investment in that in Hamilton. How do the people of Hamilton, the local jobs, the local communities who are impacted on construction or others, that those jobs aren't going to, or apprenticeships aren't going to people that live in other communities that are just coming in here to work during the day on this project.
Okay, finally then, Jamie, on that, through you, Chair, for those maybe paying close attention today and to that answer and to your comments earlier, and who may be interested at the appropriate time in these jobs or these apprenticeships or hires, what would you recommend they do at this point?
So that's where when we said the work that we'll begin again right now, we've got community benefits folks. I've got staff within my group at Metrolinx who are looking at community benefits right across the board. And so what we're going to do is continue to engage folks like the anchor institutions and the players and the stakeholders around that table, and really work with them to sort of inform and educate them. And ultimately, what we've done in Toronto and other areas is that's where the United Way and others really work to identify particular folks in priority neighborhoods and others who can learn about these type of jobs and apprenticeships on these types of projects, and really how do we create a pathway for these folks to when we actually award the contracts, they can get in there and get trained and ultimately get job ready and out there on the job sites.
Great. Thank you, and thank you as well. I was referenced briefly. I know you've met with some BIA folks already. You're quite engaged here in Hamilton, and obviously with your work elsewhere, it's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Your work, Jamie, so far, and looking forward to continued efforts. Paul, through you, Chair, the referenced article, is it fair to make clear what occurred following the newspaper article? It was referenced, fed by an anonymous source. I had one email following that article by a popular columnist, I might add. What community feedback did your office receive following that article? How much? Through you.
Through the chair, not a lot of feedback. In terms of direct people either writing or phoning in, it was a small number, I think less than 10 people in total. So I've had a couple come directly to me. Marie had a couple come to her. So it's been small. I think what has been referenced here today is more of what's happened. So where I have had a number of conversations is people saying, you know, we need to get on top of this. Let's have the information out in the public domain so that we can then enter into a period which is going to be, we get out in May and the full EA process will finish early in 2017. So there's going to be lots of time for conversation and looking at it. I just would like it to be, here's what we're recommending, now have at it, rather than talking about things which may at the end of the day be a moot point anyways. So it's been limited at this point in terms of direct feedback. Some obviously wanting more information. So what the pieces that weren't there are the pieces people are interested in, and we hope it will happen very soon with this committee.
Okay, so with the 10 or so that responded following the article, one email to my office, I'm going to go glass half full and see that as an indicator that we have been communicating well to date, that the public is well informed on LRT, on not only the benefits but also the impacts. However, quite obviously, we keep our eye on the ball. We don't stop, and as referenced by other committee members, we continue to hyper engage on particularly the impact side of things. But I appreciate the answers and the work to date, and I will take the chair back. And I believe we have Aaron. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I referenced earlier the list of questions that the Board of Directors of the Flamborough Chamber have put together. There's 15 of them, and I look very much forward to the answers because much of what I heard this morning relates to some of the questions that they put together. So I'll leave that alone. I'll wait for those answers. I'm sure it's just a typo, but there's chambers of commerce. Not one. And I guess my bottom question is, if you have a comment on it, and I apologize, Mr. Chairman, I have to leave. I just got a phone call, so I have an emergency. But in your messages to say it's all about city building. By the way, before I get that, I was going to ask the same question that Councillor Ferguson asked in terms of what happens if there's a change of government in the spring of 2018 and contracts awarded and so forth, and who knows, and then a municipal election the following fall. So, but that's a question that I submitted. But I heard you say in the type you got here, it's all about city building. And then verbally, someone up there said, engagement everywhere in the community. I think one of the big questions we have is, what are the benefits to the entire community? What are the benefits to the outlying areas? Or is this all about downtown Hamilton? I wonder if you have a comment on that.
So through the chair, this is not all about downtown Hamilton. You know, from the actual capital investment and the physical building of this, it occurs along just under 11-kilometer route east to west, and there will be a route north. So the capital investment clearly is not happening in all parts of the community. The capital investment is happening where the project will be built. The building of transportation infrastructure and transit infrastructure is good for the entire city. The bottom line is that a city with great transportation is a city that works for everybody. The ability for us to look at the economic development activity and the intensification that can go along with this and spreading out the revitalization of the core across the east and the west and north is also good, not only from a tax perspective. Increased development and broader development will add more to the general tax base of this community. It's also good in attracting other people close to those areas. So we look at the corridor and say there's stuff that can happen right along the corridor, but then it's that 800 meters around the corridor that's also of great interest and where a lot of communities have seen some additional benefits in big ways. So I think the investment economically is important. The investment that will happen in terms of greening our approach to transportation is good for everyone in the city, not just for those who live along the corridor. And investments in transportation, and this is one piece. I come back to something I said at the beginning, that I don't think anybody on this project, since this is the end state of being for transit and transportation in this community, it is a really important piece that makes great sense in terms of the spine that we're building, in terms of the approach that we're taking in this particular area. But this has to be part of the broader strategy which has been laid out. It's been put forward in terms of Rapid Ready. You know, I listen with great interest every time Dave talks about the strategy now that we have around transit that also has to be there as well. And perhaps there's opportunities through the chair to Aaron, there's opportunities now for us to look at what those additional investments are that can feed other parts of the community as well. So I want to put all those pieces in because sometimes I think people focus in only on well, it'll drive a few more taxes and that's good for everybody. I actually think that's way too narrow a conversation. It's clear that that's important, but I think it's also about these other pieces that I just touched on as well and more. And I know that was a big question that was part of it. We sometimes materialize out of conversations to which I think have to be put in parameters. And if I can just have 2 more seconds, Mr. Chair. The report that came out of McMaster around the opportunities that are here, it was a great report, but it is a really important opportunity that if we do it well in conjunction with a number of other pieces of work, can actually have benefits within 800 meters or living right along that corridor.
Just want to email to the clerk those 15 questions. Excellent. Thank you, Aaron, for contributing. Next, it's Susie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I wanted to thank Paul and his staff and Jamie and Andrew for continually being in conversation with RBIA, which is great. Just to spin off a little further from what Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Farr have said, there have been some discussions in the media recently about the designs, particularly in International Village. I wanted to just ask if you can confirm that those are merely speculation at this point, and also wanted to confirm that before design plans are rolled out of this nature, if you will be discussing this with the BIA. As we've all said a million times, we need to make sure that miscommunication isn't the issue here, and we don't want to have mass panic among the businesses, especially in my corridor, which is very fragile. We need to make sure that we're on top of all of this, and it's not just mass miscommunication out there and speculation.
So through the chair, we certainly want to keep that conversation going and make sure that you are well aware of the thinking and the direction that the pieces are moving. You know that part of the corridor, and you've known it for years. This isn't something, again, that's a revelation, is a tough part of the corridor in terms of the design of all the elements that you would want to put in place. And so we're having to think through that. We're doing it from the lens of what makes sense for the people who live there, because there are residents who actually live right along that section and front onto King Street, the businesses, how we service businesses and keep their operations moving along, as well as how we would incorporate the traffic, from a transit, from a driving, from a biking, and from a walking perspective to those businesses. So the final design is being locked down, so we can bring it within the next 4 to 5 weeks, and we'll continue to communicate in terms of not trying to have these surprises and anxieties build. It's the biggest fear, and I understand everybody wants to know as soon as possible, but we're just trying to do it in as quick a possible way, but in the right way, so that we're talking about what really needs to be talked about. The other piece I'll say is that after that, there's an opportunity for the dialogue to inform, what tweaks we can make to make things even better. So this isn't a situation where, here we go, like it or lump it. There are certain things we're not going to re-examine clearly through this process, but there are lots of opportunities to make things better, and we want to hear those not only from you, but from all sorts of folks. And we hope you can work with us, and Jamie and I have talked about this. How can we work with you to have you do some work so that the businesses that you interact with on a far more regular basis and have a trust relationship that's different from ours, how can you help us get the real feedback so that we can make it the best it can be?
Okay. Anybody else? Oh, Kathy? And then you, first time, Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Paul and Jamie and Kelly. Welcome. I hope that some of the thoughts that I have today are around the initiatives that perhaps Jamie will come up with in terms of having a Hamilton solution to some of the initiatives that can move forward to help businesses through the construction phase. And I look forward to talking to you about those a little bit further. But talking towards the mayor's suggestion of a trial closure for construction, I really would like to see the feasibility of that, what that looks like, because every time people like us or Supercrawl or several other applications have gone forward to close King Street, it's met with a lot of angst by the city officials, and so that's part of it. I hope that you'll also consider what's happening this summer with Gore Park. Gore Park is going to be under construction as well. So we hope that that will play into the feasibility aspect of that as well. The whole transportation study that says, okay, where are two-way streets going to be implemented? Because if these trial closures are going to happen, you're going to have another alternative plan and look at the construction phaseology of what's going to be in disrepair, what's going to be looked at in terms of the construction phase, just in normal maintenance programs that we have happening downtown already. I also wanted to explain a little bit about what Susie and I have been working on as well. A couple of meetings ago, you approved a small amount of funding for a project that we are doing jointly together in terms of cleaning up an alleyway that extends all the way from James Street to Wellington. Alleyways are going to be an important element of transportation and as well as the construction of LRT along King Street. If businesses are on an alleyway, they're going to have an access to their customers and also to their deliveries as an alternative to the King Street right-of-way. So this project, while it's emphasizing the cleanup of the alleyway and communication about dumping and garbage along those alleyways, it also is going to help to try and encourage those businesses along that alleyway to start thinking about their back doors as to how to clean up their the backs of their buildings, the backs of their businesses, so that customers can start to look at access to their businesses from their back doors. And so that's part of the initiatives that we've already started up. We hope to have that person started April 4th, and so that person will be a communication person to us that will help to start the ball rolling in terms of communication for us. We hope that with some of that initiative, we will get some communication pieces from you so that we can start that initiative right away, because it is very important. What we don't need is, in the public's eye, in the business person's eye, ideas floated out there that are not 100% solid. And it really puts Susie and I and others in a very precarious situation that says we don't want to comment to the media or to the public about what's out there that we don't know is the truth or not. And so we want to make sure that we are commenting on what is solid and what is fact, and therefore it's really important to get the communication piece out. Thank you.
Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had an opportunity to knock on a lot of doors in Ward 7 in the last number of weeks, both on the candidates, and I can tell you that LRT is still a burning issue on the mountain. And I think I asked a question here of you, and I think the answer is that LRT is not a transportation solution. In fact, it's more about city building. So I want to focus on that issue because it is about communication. So two things. One is there is a premise that along the corridor, and I guess this is best practices or what's transpired or experienced in some communities when they put out LRT, that they had growth in assessment. What I don't understand, or the community understands, is how does that impact them? So when we talk about the greater good, the question is, how does it impact them? Now, my understanding of the assessment process, it wouldn't be treated as new assessment, like the $13 million that we generated from all the new build and greenfields. It would be an assessment based on reassessment of those properties and lands along that corridor where the development may take place. So when it's a reassessment, it's actually part of an averaging in of the overall assessment to determine that zero level. So it's much more complex. And then over a number of years, the question is, what is the net benefit? And if we're trying to communicate that, it's not, I want to make this clear, just because you have an increased assessment on a particular corridor doesn't mean that there's a broader implication. It's not new taxes, let's be clear on that. When people say it's new taxes, my understanding when I met with Mike Zagaric and that, is that if it's a reassessment, it's averaged in on the overall assessment of the city. And then it may be higher, and when it goes higher in one area, as you know how assessment works, it's revenue neutral, so it means it goes lower in the other parts of the city. So that might be the benefit, but we never fully articulated how that process works and what the implications may be. So from a communications point of view, to try and ensure that we're getting people understanding the city building aspect of it, we haven't really done a good job in articulating how that works with our current assessment process. So I'm wondering, on a communication point of view, have we looked at that piece, since we are now acknowledging this is not a transportation solution, it's a city building solution, to put more emphasis on that communication?
Through the chair, important to recognize the conversation we've been talking about is not just a transportation solution, for one. The second piece is, yes, on the economic side, we have some work to do in terms of the practical realities of it. As I say, these grand pronouncements are not helpful to the broad community in terms of understanding what will really happen. So your points are well taken as we're developing the stronger and more detailed message behind the economic aspect, the environmental aspect, the transportation aspect, the links to regional transportation. We'll focus in on what those real numbers look like and what the reality of that development looks like, so that people can be very clear about it. It's not just a message that there'll be economic activity, therefore it's good for the city. It must be much more detailed, and there is detailed information we can provide, as well as best practice now of where LRTs have been successful on the economic piece and where they haven't been successful, and let's understand what helped helped some implementations of LRT be successful so that we can replicate that in Hamilton. So we'll bring forward some of those answers to you. I appreciate the comments about getting some clarity around that financial piece.
We offered four bullets at the start of the meeting. You weren't here. How LRT will benefit and change Hamilton, economic development, environment, transportation and mobility, integrated transportation in the GTHA. And then we went over each of those four in your absence.
So the economic development piece, but I did read the report, so I thank you for the update, Mr. Chair. It's not like we don't read the reports before we come here. So the issue for me, though, is it's still not clear. When you say economic development, building simple condos, is that seen as economic development? And if you're looking at assessment growth, if it's happening in a specific corridor, what is happening in the rest of the city? And if their assessment growth in the other city, does it offset the actual benefit when you look at how that assessment model is applied in the city of Hamilton and across the province of Ontario?
So the specific answers we will get for you so that we can be clear in terms of what type of economic activity we can expect if we do our work right, what that looks like and the financial implications to the community at large. And I know that that's part of the questions that have come from Aaron and others. It's part of the questions that Councillor Whitehead has raised at least on 2 occasions with me. So we'll get to that. Today it's, those 4 areas are important for us to continue to talk about, which was in response to the idea that, we need to look at this beyond just a transit solution, but the specifics around what we're thinking also to come into play with these rezoning work, because what can go along that corridor will also be part of the rezoning work and how that plays together with it. So we'll bring back some more detail as we develop those messages. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I think the point I'm making is I'm not into spinning something. If we're saying there's a benefit, that we better darn well identify more specifically, and I mean specifically, how that is modeled out. What can we expect? I heard that it's still a transit solution, and yet I was told that when you take a look at $1 billion and you made an investment in the community, and you could have taken a different alternative approach that provided benefit to 80% of the community in public transit, then in that context, LRT is not a transit solution. Would you agree with that?
Through the chair, I think the message around LRT is that this is not just a transportation solution for this city. Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Now, the other question I have, and I've asked this consistently, my concern is, and maybe I should be just blunt and frank, is there a strategy, a tactical strategy within staff in regards to the reports that are looking at belaying as much as practical the more contentious decisions on design of this program? I've asked before about if there's going to be expropriation. Is there a tactical timeline that staff are looking at to make that announcement so that it's later than sooner? And my preference is, for transparency purposes, it should be sooner. We should be identifying that, and we should start having those discussions with the potential impacted landowners. The other issue, of course, is there's a real contentious issue, and that is the conversion of Main Street. And I've heard that it's not been defined as of yet, although there's been leaked documentation already reported on. So the question is, my community wants to know, not tomorrow, not 6 months from now, not a year from now, is there going to be conversion on Main Street to two-way?
So through the chair, it's not a project of the LRT office to look at two-waying of Main. Our traffic study work will not be completed to the end of the summer. That will provide input as to where traffic will go as LRT is developed in this community. The impacts of that need to be then factored into what the solutions look like. So no, a project of ours is not to design how two-waying of Main looks for this community. Our work is to look at the traffic impacts of LRT and how best to mitigate that within the existing network of of roads, and that includes both truck transportation as well as cars. And it impacts, I will say, bike and pedestrian as well, just to make sure that all those modes of getting around are impacted. To the other piece around expropriation, once we've locked down this design and get ready to present the initial work of this, we also have in our work plan to ensure that every property that would be affected is communication centers when this will be fully public, the public information centers in September. So our critical timeline is that we're going to have to start in May through to August and into September having these conversations to say, you know, I raised as one of the anecdotes we've heard, you do not want to come to a public information center in September and realize that your property's impacted and had no one talk to you about that. Now, for some, in some instances, we know that the property impact is the operating maintenance and storage facility. That is a piece of that land. So we will be starting that as soon as we have the design. The design also is it may be more of a, this is you to get feedback from the
Yeah, so I'm not asking any more questions, but I want to reiterate the one that I did ask within that number of questions. Is staff strategizing around the more contentious issues within this program and unilaterally making decisions to delay the provision and the transparency of that information based on tactics versus transparency?
Through the chair, once we have our design locked down, we're producing materials that will help support people's understanding of that design and bringing it forward. I can tell you as late as a couple of weeks ago, we were still making adjustments to that design of 4 weeks, and it's not to hold information back, good, bad, or otherwise. It's also to build the collateral information that we need so that people can actually understand what that design looks like. Simply throwing up a bunch of words about how we're doing this isn't as good. For you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, that information will be there, and it will be as we won't have yet. Those are occurring, and they won't be finished till the end of the summer. But the rest of the information, there's going to be a fair bit of holding it back for any purpose. Going to be discussing about potential.
So the answer is no, staff are not holding back or tactically holding back on contentious issues purposely for a right time to release that information.
Through the chair, we're holding back all the information until we have the final design.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on a couple of fronts, and I appreciate Councillor Whitehead's position on this, and I commend him on standing up on behalf of what he believes to be accurate. However, from a high, we're talking about an economic need rather than public transit, and it's really simple in that sprawl has sucked the life out of the core and has hurt the city. And we hear how urban sprawl is really unsustainable. This project is a step towards the continued reversal of urban sprawl in attracting, which is accurate. So the direct benefit is that when you increase the assessment growth within the line and the core between city motor and you're increasing that property value, which increases the assessment growth, which then obviously increases taxes in that area and mitigates taxes in Councillor Whitehead's area. Because for years, if you look at it historically speaking, of our lack of assessment, our lack of property value, that 5% an increase in taxes didn't mean 5% for everyone. In some cases in Ward 4, I recall when I first got elected, we were in the minus because we didn't have the assessment growth. Now, the benefit is not only the tax decrease they're going to be faced with, which is a huge benefit and one of the most significant, but also the fact not only are we reversing urban sprawl, we'll be reversing the brain drain, we'll be building and redeveloping in areas where we have existing infrastructure, which means we don't need to spend more capital on greenfield development, which then sucks the life out of our capital budget. Policing. These are like fundamental issues that one needs to understand to be a city councillor. And these are the types of investments that many outlying areas have been speaking about for the last 20 years. So you can't have it both ways. At the end of the day, this will decrease taxes for the mountain residents, decrease taxes for the suburban area, increase their capital or decrease the impact on our capital and operating budgets. The city of Toronto is not a great city because of Etobicoke or Scarborough. It's because of the city of Toronto proper. That's where we're headed, and jump on board. Thank you.
Hop on board. Thank you, Councillor. I have myself a second time, if I can hand you the chair. Just one quick comment. I appreciate the debate. It's been well formulated over many, many years, the one we just heard. I think that good things that come of this, the largest city building exercise in the I'll just change the, you had said in one of your answers just a moment ago, Paul, that it is not up to the LRT office to come up with the solutions. You're just measuring traffic impacts. And the solutions, therefore, through you, Chair, would come from Mater and our traffic management in conjunction with working with Metrolinx. How does that work exactly?
So through the chair, I think that was in relation to his, two-weighing of another arterial, a project of ours in terms of the full design and whatever else. No, that is, we're constantly seeking feedback from a variety of departments. One of the areas that we're working with very closely is the folks that are involved with the traffic, or the transportation master plan, because some of what's in there impacts us. We have to have inputs in order to do our work on traffic impact, and we need to back and forth. That specific reference was to, are we as a project looking at redesigning and bringing forward ideas and materials around that, and is germane and absolutely must take place in order for LRT to work.
Okay, and I'm glad you reiterated, and it's important that that's understood. And I have a suggestion. We've had a few here today. Jarvis Street, Toronto, has the reversible lane technology. I'm just throwing it out there, and if our TMP folks could just make a note, and when it's the appropriate time, I know Councillor Maroul is going to have a fuller look at things at our next meeting. He's going to work with staff in advance. Talked about the reversible lane technology. It may indeed work on a good chunk of the corridor. I'm no expert. That's why I just wanted to throw it on the floor now. It seems to be very effective in areas of Toronto, particularly Jarvis Street. Thank you. And finally, I'll take the chair back. The final word to you, Mr. Mayor.
Grateful, thank you. So just a couple of comments on what we've heard. Asking in many instances the same questions over and over and over again. Hopefully, we can put some of these issues to bed with properly related reports. And is a great. Fortunately, there are times when information isn't ready for prime time. It isn't complete. It is just speculative. And I think Paul, your answer was 100% right, and I support you fully. That until such time as the reports are complete, that information shouldn't be this committee and these subcommittees and our good folks at the BIAs. I think it's very unfortunate we've had this leak. If folks want up-to-date information, want us to develop media to get from time to time, but I think it's unfortunate because it doesn't help our cause any. And I think is very unfortunate. Having said that, if members of council sitting at the table here want to advocate for a two-way on Main, they should. There'd be an issue that you want to have dealt with sooner rather than later. That certainly there are opportunities for you to do that, and I think I think this discussion is helpful, but I hope we don't keep circling the drain on this one, because I think, I've heard from others the same question. Benefit of LRT to the broader community. At some point, we have to come to terms with what the answer is, and if it's not, keep hammering away at that very same issue. So I'm delighted with where we're going. Information out there that's complete and public at large, and I think they would appreciate something that isn't speculative, that isn't just it's very difficult for everybody to get information out there before it's ready and complete. That just makes everyone go off in a whole bunch of different directions that may or may not have value, that may or may not be worth considerations that we're considering. So I thank you for what you're doing, Paul, and the team, and I think we're communicating in all the right ways, and hold true to that. We're withholding everything until we're ready to the proper procedure in terms of how to get this information out there. I think that's the right way to go. Thank you for all of that.
Councillor Whitehead.
Here, the point I'm making is that whatever we're selling it's because we're not articulating and communicating properly. I want LFT to work, but I don't want to have a lack of good information. And what I'm talking about when I talk about the assessment, we haven't demonstrated it. Understand, no, the broader community does not understand that direct impact and benefit. All I'm asking is give me the tools so we can get more people understanding the benefit of LRT. So if I'm asking in a way that you might suggest is negative, well, my job is to make sure I have the best tools to make this work and communicate and get more people to understand. If you're not giving the tools, then it's my duty, fiduciary, and those issues so that we have clear communication. Benefits. Thank you.
Move to Councillor Marula.
Just friendly. We have demonstrated the benefits of assessment growth within the core. Just this last budget, we had tax increase. You had some areas in the past in the core, in my area, we were in minus. People were getting an actual rebate at the end of the year because assessment growth wasn't making the grade. And on the mountain, they're actually less than. We have demonstrated it. It is a complex issue, however, that needs to be simplified to communicate to the public. I agree, because it's based on averages, and 5% increase doesn't mean 5%, depending on the ward. That councillors to hold our town hall meetings to explain that individually, and perhaps collectively as a city. But the bottom line, core, hence, this will lead at their benefit and at our cost. So at the end of the day, our property values go up, their taxes go down, and Bob's your uncle, and he used to be our mayor. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll move to receive.
Just a sec, just for clarification, we just had it during the budget process where we had 1.6% assessment growth. And this is where the confusion is. Let's be clear. $1 million additional dollars in the coffers. So the confusion is when we talk about assessment growth, this is not the category of direct new taxes to the community over and above that assessment piece. So I wanted to be clear that that's where the confusion is.
Okay.
Move to receive. Councillor in favor? Any opposed? No opposed. Thank you very much. On to item 8.1, discussion items. This is the correspondence from the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce respecting a moratorium on any new projects, roadway alterations, or designs that reduce motor vehicle capacity on LRT corridor. Keenan, you want to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this was a holdover from the previous committee or task force December moratorium motion is, but we have since received a notice of a motion put to Public Works on February 29th, 2016, requesting transportation planning staff to study changing the level of service on our arterial road network from level D to level C, in effect making our streets even more car-friendly, if that is even possible. And these motions, I believe, are attempt to look to plan for LRT using best practices into the 21st century, to the need to rebalance our streets, to build them for people and the businesses on them, not just cars. We have to be vigilant as a task force against science, anti-progress, anti-everything we know about placemaking and city building in the modern age. These efforts fly in the face of all the citizen engagement that has been done with our future, which is real evidence, not just anecdote, and it flies in the face of our obligations as a city and our agreement with Metrolinx, and could dangerously undermine the city's effort for this project and to reach its full potential. And I just thought it was important.
Okay, no secret, both motions born of Council offer before you discuss in this discussion item, Councillor, where you stand on this actual moratorium. It was asked of Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really surprised the Chamber of Commerce doesn't get it. When an LRT that is going to disrupt a day, to try and figure out in a predictable way and how you will mitigate that construction phase. When I talk to staff, the issue is if you continue changing capacity on roadworks during the period where they're trying to provide a solution to mitigate the impacts of the construction phase, they want to work with predictability. And the only way you can get predictability changes during the determine what those alternative transportation routes are to mitigate the transportation is impacted. Anyone that can't figure that one out and doesn't understand that when you shut down a major corridor that it's going to have major implications and that staff need to be able to predict. I just.
What's the status on that moratorium motion?
I still plan. I'm working with staff. I think it's about staff sitting down and articulating the same message I'm articulating now. This is not about a permanent. This is not a permanent issue. This is a temporary issue just to accommodate the construction phase. So if anyone thought the moratorium was expanded beyond the LRT, no. You go right back to business as usual, and then what roads need to be converted or can be converted will be converted. Again, predictability to ensure to move car traffic around, knowing what the capacity of the road network is without 3 months, etc. So it's about predictability. It's about good planning and attack otherwise.
Councillor Marula.
We all want to get to the same spot, and I think if this is seen, you mentioned at the beginning of this meeting when I was bringing forward the notice of motion regarding the trial periods of closing down the road in order to assess the impact that needs to be adjusted. It might be merited to look at as long as it is temporary. I think if it's understood to be permanent, that's where I think the contention is. But ultimately, we're going to have to deal with some radical in the city, so everything should be on the table with respect to trying to mitigate that. So along that spirit, I could support ingrained. Thank you.
The C. So you asked me a specific question, which I responded.
First time, whatever, that's fine.
So the second piece is, Mr. Chair, if you look at Toronto, Vancouver, and so forth, and at the designation or the threshold they look at, let's be clear that C still has congestion, no question. And I think Councillor Miller heard the same explanation. Bicycling, pedestrian traffic, and the whole bit. It would actually create a process in which, to alleviate the congestion, that you would utilize more of that alternative. So actually, it's not a negative thing, it's actually a positive thing. So for all those lanes and more pedestrian walk, that envelope, we are pushing that alternative form of transportation, cycling or pedestrian, and still have an adequate flow of traffic. So the way you get adequate flow of traffic doesn't mean you necessarily have to change anything other than ensuring that you're providing reasonable alternative forms of transportation that people will go to. So to jump to a conclusion again, the way it's been suggested, when traffic department clearly indicated to me, no, this is not necessarily a negative thing. And I want to also address, Mr. Chair, that currently on Gar Street, it's a parking lot 9 times out of 10, especially at peak hours. Right now, I've had a meeting on Scenic. I have a kilometer, almost a kilometer of queued traffic in front of home. A nightmare in regards to congestion issue. Other areas are flowing nicely. Doesn't mean it's applicable to every area of the city. And if I don't do my due diligence representing my community and ensuring that the congestion we receive on Scenic, Mohawk, West Fifth isn't addressed in a comprehensive way, then I wouldn't be doing my job.
Move to receive. Yeah, moved by Ferguson, seconded by Councillor. Any opposed? None. A2, Aaron had to run, so he has forwarded his 15 Flamborough Chamber of Commerce questions to clerks. Clerks will advance. I'm sure we will go over the answers. Can someone please, Laurie would like us to move that the 15 questions from Flamborough Chamber of Commerce be referred to staff. That's moved. Councillor Johnson, all in favor?
Laurie here taking minutes, as we always do. We've had, live streaming going on.
That's
We've
right.
had the video being recorded, but I see a stenographer sitting here today.
Question, and Laurie can answer that for you. We learned this a few meetings ago.
Right. This is to assist a member of the citizen at a request from the Access and Equity Office for a deaf individual.
Oh, okay. So it's a city stenographer, then it's not a metro.
It's service.
Is this a permanent thing, or is this
For LRT meetings, yes.
just LRT?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Anybody else? Staff? Move to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, everybody.